15 seconds.
DCBL.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6,
Roll B.
5.
Tonight on Metro News, the future of ski fields looks in doubt. We meet a farmer who spent $2 million on cows in one day. And we check out Christchurch's latest mountain biking race.
Kia ora and welcome to Metro News, brought to you by Te Whakapaho o Aotearoa.
The climate is changing and Canterbury ski fields are feeling the heat. Some didn't even open this year. Others were forced to shorten their season. And as Hugo Cameron reports, the science shows the problem is only getting worse.
Usually this time each year, small Canterbury ski fields like Mount Olympus are a hive of activity. But this year, due to a lack of snow, it never opened. Because of climate change, this problem is only likely to get worse.
We'll see a significant reduction in snow, both in terms of the actual snow on the ground, maximum depths, but also the season duration will change.
Hendricks has modelled the potential effects of climate change on snow levels in New Zealand and says we're on track for a worst-case scenario.
We're tending towards those higher impacts, and in this case that means a greater reduction in natural snowfall.
His study shows that, under the high emissions scenario, which is looking most likely, the number of days with at least 30 centimetres of natural snow will more than halve at some Canterbury fields.
NIWA says that because snow levels can vary quite drastically from year to year, the effects of long-term change can be hidden. But warmer winters are expected in future, which means less snow will fall at these elevations.
However, larger ski fields do have ways to replace snow lost through climate change.
So for us, our planning and our strategy is to continue to work on investments like snowmaking and our grooming and our snow farming, and how we do those things to try and stay ahead of all of that. But
snowmaking is one solution.
Because snow management is also key. If you can optimise your snow coverage, then that also means you're not having to make as much snow potentially. We know exactly now there's a thin spot over here, let's get our snow guns running over in that spot.
But even if it's fuelled by hydropower, experts say it's only a local solution and not a long-term fix for the massive changes ahead.
There's actually a lot of really good benefits from snowmaking, but there's a really big downside, which is that energy costs that it takes to make that snow.
Skiing is a Kiwi tradition for many. Experts predict we can buy some time, but say everyone needs to think greener to stay on the slopes. Hugo Cameron for Metro News.
It's been 3 years since Mycoplasma bovis hit New Zealand's cattle herds, resulting in more than 160,000 animals being culled. Harry Galbraith visits a mid-Canterbury dairy farm to see how they've recovered after losing all their stock.
Early last year, M. bovis was at its worst on John Connell's farm.
Did a complete depopulation in March of 2019. So 1,183 cows and then 364 calves, that's the yearlings, were culled throughout from March through till April.
Replacing the culled animals was a very expensive procedure and needed a quick turnaround.
So as soon as we got the go-ahead, we jumped in a ute with the stock agent and ran around and bought 1,000 cows one day. So it was over $2 million worth of cows in one day.
M. bovis has ran rampant on cattle farms across the country, with thousands of cows having to be culled because of the infection. But things are slowly on the mend for farmers as they have all replaced their culled cattle. M. bovis is a nasty disease and can cause mastitis, pneumonia, arthritis and abortions in cattle. More than half of the 250 national cases were in Canterbury.
As far as I'm aware, it's slowed down.
Federated Farmers says there's an effective way to prevent infection.
And just keeping a tight herd and even a closed herd can help. And that means a closed herd means no extra cattle coming into your property.
John Connell's already doing this.
So we're trying to do as much in-house as possible.
After a lot of hard work, John and his farm are almost back to normal.
Any time you change a system, a dairy farm system. It's a huge upheaval to the staff, the property, everything.
It was a huge upheaval for John and the other 249 farms that were hit. But now, with only one infected farm in the whole country, things are looking up. Harry Galbraith, Metro News.
A slip forming beneath the Akaroa Lighthouse is putting the landmark's future in doubt. As I discovered, the threat of losing the lighthouse is a worry for the tourism industry. It might be covered up, but locals believe the slip beside the Akaroa icon is a disaster waiting to happen.
Because our lighthouse, which we put a lot of time and effort into, might end up in the sea. It's very hard to value something like this because you can't replace them.
Losing it would be a major blow for a community reliant on tourism.
I think 80% of the jobs here, if not higher, would be tourism related. So to lose anything that's going to impact on that hurts.
Experts say rising sea levels and one or two big storms can make a big difference.
If you're talking about cliffs, it can sort of erode the bottom of the cliffs, and it might be that it was eroding it for a while, but then all of a sudden the cliff is sort of overhanging, and so you might get, it actually collapses.
And her concerns are echoed.
And land around here slips very easily. The heavy rain, wet clay, moves all around the Banks Peninsula.
Ben says the Christchurch City Council is responsible and their planned slip repairs couldn't come at a worse time.
Midsummer we've been told, so there's no fixed dates.
We keep trying to get the message to the powers that be that ideally things need to be fixed through winter, autumn, early spring, so they don't impact on the numbers that are coming through summer.
Christchurch City Council say the timing for the repairs is because they need time to design a new retaining wall, which will then have to go through a resource consent process before the work can finally begin. Locals are hoping the beloved landmark is fixed before it's too late. Ursula Kay, Metro News.
Whai Aka nei, the Arts Centre focuses in on funding issues, and we visit the country's last community-run post shop.
So I'm Paul Vanwood. I am living in London, have been for the last 6 years, and I'm working as a digital consultant. I was working in radio in New Zealand for about 4 years, and when I moved over I was just looking for a bit of a change of scene, and I started doing like websites and web builds for medium-sized businesses. Ended up working for one of the big agencies, one of the kind of global agencies, and from there I've been moved into consulting as well. My work is genuinely around innovation. It's across all different industries, so I'm not doing one thing at any given time. Not just using technology innovatively, but thinking about, what's the strategy here? How can you use that to think about what people need and respond to those needs? I go out to client sites, so I get to travel all over the place. Could be in Zurich, or I could be working on an account in Berlin or somewhere for 6 months, or up in Scotland. But my home office is here in Canary Wharf. I finished my degree off campus as an executive student. It wasn't purely theoretical. There was a good amount of background and knowledge, but there was a lot of practical application. Learning how to interact with people and how workplaces work was actually a really big advantage.
Kia ora anō. The Christchurch Arts Centre may have survived the earthquakes, but it's now facing a financial crisis. It's had to lay off staff and has lost funding from the City Council. Asha Abdi joins us now to tell us more. Asha.
Management at the Arts Centre described the current situation as a huge challenge, despite the fact that most of the buildings have been restored and many have tenants. Their income is not enough to cover their costs. And for the Arts Centre, that is a major problem. The iconic Christchurch Arts Centre is in financial trouble, its future uncertain. CEO Philip Aldridge is desperate to get more funding from somewhere. At the moment, there's very little income.
So we have about 30 separate tenancies at the moment, with about half the floor plate of the site restored. So that's our base income. Unfortunately, that doesn't cover all the costs of running the buildings.
They'd been hoping the Christchurch City Council would continue their support of the 142-year-old building, but that was stopped 2 years ago.
I don't think there was any direct reason that they cut the arts centre. In fact, when I talked to them about it, they didn't seem to be aware that it had happened.
The council isn't shedding much light on the matter either. When Metronews sought comment, they responded with a one-line statement. It simply says, with no explanation, this decision was made by the council as part of the 2018 to 2028 long-term plan. Despite it being a Category 1 heritage site, the Arts Centre is run by a private trust, and Heritage New Zealand does not fund it.
So, there are a lot of private buildings around the country and historic buildings that are not owned by Heritage New Zealand. But they quite rightly don't regard it as their responsibility.
In the past year, 6 job positions at the Arts Centre have been cut to cover costs. Despite this, Chief Executive Philip Aldridge says the future of the centre looks bright. Earthquake insurance money is being put into new and innovative additions.
That little dome at the top, that was the university's observatory. So we are getting the telescope back, and just in part of this building there will be a small hotel which we're putting in to try and raise money to help us stay afloat.
The CEO has high hopes they'll make it through, and what will keep it alive is the wonderful and vibrant atmosphere. If the Arts Centre doesn't receive the financial assistance it needs, Philip Aldridge says there's a chance ownership could revert to the City Council, but he says the main players don't want that to happen. He also says the council is under financial pressure, so there are no easy options. Despite this, he believes there is a lot of goodwill to ensure the Arts Centre survives.
Thanks, Asha. The Stanmore Book and Post Shop is completely run by volunteers who say they go the extra mile for their community. I met with the woman behind the operation. Jenny Smith is passionate about post, and that passion has helped keep the Stanmore Book and Post Shop open.
I think we've got something like 12 volunteers who help assist either with the mail or during the course of the day, the operation, or come in to help with the magazines or other aspects of the work.
Threatened with closure 4 years ago, the post shop was saved by community organisation Te Whare Roimata. It attracts more than 400 plus customers a week, proving when it comes to mail, you can't beat the good old community post shop.
New Zealand Post, if I can say, has gone more corporate, and I guess we're the remnants of an old way of working.
I think it's a wonderful community effort.
It's very good, but they took away a lot of the automatic payment services.
Back in 2009, NZ Post started cutting back on standalone post shops like this one, moving them to pharmacies and supermarkets. And if a replacement wasn't found, then they'd be shut.
It's important to have a shop like this because so many of our locals rely on that sort of stuff. We have a lot of elderly who don't have computers and stuff like that. Letters are still really important to them.
Many of the volunteers that have worked at the shop have gone on to further employment elsewhere.
I love working here because it makes me feel like I can do something of priority for the community.
Also gives them a very good skill set because, they're dealing with the public, they're dealing with money, they're dealing with precious goods, whether that be sentimental or monetary.
Linwood Village has struggled to revitalise since the February 2011 quake, but it still has plenty of spirit, with Jenny and Janine's volunteer-run post shop symbolising that. Bigby Worthmoller, Metro News.
On October 17th, New Zealand will go to the polls and the Electoral Commission is running a campaign to get more young people to vote. Youth advocate Marlon Saumalu is in the studio now with Nick James to talk about the importance of voting. Nick.
Kia ora, Marlon. How are you?
Tēnā koe, Nick. I'm very well, thank you.
Awesome. How does the enrolment rates of young people compare to other demographics?
The most staggering statistic is probably the 70 plus age range in New Zealand are actually almost at 100% enrolled and voting. If you compare that to youth and young adults, which is 18 to 29-year-olds, we're only 69% enrolled, and at the last election, less than half of us actually voted.
Awesome. And what is the Electoral Commission doing to encourage young voters at this incoming election?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, other than hiring brand new roles as youth advocates, there's 3 of us here in Christchurch. They've hired us specifically to connect with our rangatahi here in Aotearoa, because they found that the usual older people weren't quite connecting with the youth. So they've brought in youth advocates especially to talk to youth. We're also making it super easy to enrol online. Just you can use your New Zealand passport, a driver's license, and RealMe verified identity, and it takes you 2 minutes online. So we're making that super easy for our youth. Yeah.
And just on that, has there been an increase seen in young voters over this election or over the past elections?
There actually has. So right now at the moment, we're actually seeing a 5% increase since July. So in July, we were sitting, youth were sitting at around 67%. We're now up to 72%.
Awesome. And do you think there needs to be more education about the voting process and how it works?
Oh, absolutely. I think we really need to, like we're doing now, target kids when they're young. Research has just come out saying that kids, when they start voting younger, they're more likely to vote throughout their life. So yes, I believe really strongly in empowering our youth as early as possible.
And what are some of the effective strategies been to get young people voting?
Yep, so I talked about us youth advocates. We're also putting out advertising, target advertising on social media channels, so you know, the usual YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all those platforms we're really targeting to youth. And we are also encouraging kids voting. So places can register to do mock elections with young kids. So yeah, like I said, encouraging them from a young age really helps.
And do you think there'll be an effect on the number of people voting due to COVID-19?
Yes and no. So we've tried to make it as COVID safe as possible. We've given people more time to vote, so you have now 2 weeks instead in comparison to the last election you only had a week. So this election you can vote from the 3rd of October right through to the 17th of October. So you've got more time, there's more voting booth places to go to. There's queue management, hand sanitizer, BYO pen, or if not, we can give you a pen to keep.
Awesome. Thank you so much for talking with us.
No worries, Nick.
Thanks, Nick. Coming up, we take a peek at Christchurch's latest animal art, and we meet the people of all ages putting the pedal to the metal.
My name is Nan Surasampan. I work in the camera department in film and television. Currently I'm in Brussels shooting a little piece, but I'm based in London and I travel all over the world filming bits and pieces here and there. Graduated 4 years ago from the New Zealand Broadcasting School. From then I've just been all over the place, working on documentaries, commercials, TV series, reality shows, all sorts of stuff. After doing my internship with a local company in Christchurch, I moved over to New York. From New York I went over to Vancouver. From Vancouver I moved over to London. Working in Europe is amazing. The history that surrounds you, it's older than the country that I grew up in, and to me that's very inspiring. The course was very practical, which was exactly what I needed. To do what I do, you need to really have your hands on the equipment to kind of feel where things need to be and how to frame and everything. The past 4 years after graduating from broadcasting school have been the best years of my life. Not many people can say, I do what I love as a living. I can safely say that. Every day I go to work, there's something new that I learn. It's very exciting for me.
Welcome back. For over 30 years, Christchurch's Plains FM has been hosting community stories and voices. Kamina Blewett speaks to those behind the mic, making it happen.
Get local, get connected with Plains FM.
Hola, kamusta, kia ora. These are just a few ways of saying hello over Plains airwaves. From 96.9's beginnings in the late 80s, Canterbury has been hearing the sound of community.
If you're a migrant or a refugee or an international student, it's really hard to be somewhere away from your family and friends and not being hearing your language and your community news. So I think we fill a role there in that space.
And in filling that space, they have it all.
We have a very broad range of programs here, and they cover everything from different languages to children's radio plays to environmentalism.
You're listening to Plains FM.
The station hosts over 90 shows, 18 of which are in foreign languages, just like Hola Latino.
Our show Hola Latino is about the Latin community in New Zealand, mostly our culture, our roots and our music.
With growing diversity in Aotearoa, Plains show hosts have the opportunity to discuss what's important to their cultures.
So my show is called Ensalada Latina. It's in Spanish for Latin salad. And what I do is basically showcase what Latin Americans are doing in Christchurch.
And facilitating a range of voices is the frequency's goal.
Our aim is to actually get as many of those voices on air as possible.
Something's in the air, so tune in to listen and learn about all of Christchurch's diverse stories. Kamina Blewett for Metronews, Mabuhay.
Local artists are working hard to decorate Christchurch's latest art installation. And as Antoinette Spicer reports, everyone is gearing up for a big reveal in November.
It's artwork with a difference.
I want it to be fun. I want people to smile. I really, really want the penguin to be in the sun.
All around the city, in secret locations, penguins are being dressed up and decorated.
It's a lot of playing with shapes, sort of seeing it as a 3D object and how shapes would look on a 3D surface, and sort of doing some studies of hands and to convey the sort of message that I wanted.
There are 50 large penguins and another 65 smaller ones, all being auctioned off for charity.
So Cholmondeley Children's Centre, they offer respite care for children whose whānau are in crisis.
Not surprisingly, the theme is the Antarctic, along with climate change and exploration.
These really delicate threads, which for me they connect the idea of humans with the natural environment.
The human-sized penguins are designed to stand out, and that's attracted emerging artists to the project.
It's really a great opportunity for a young artist like Rebecca to make a public sculpture, which is quite a rare opportunity for someone to have.
6 years ago, it was giraffes. They were also auctioned off, raising $500,000 for charity and generating international attention.
We had people buying them and sending them to family members in America. Somebody who's a Kiwi but living in Australia ordered one.
This is just one of the 65 secret locations across Christchurch, making up the trail which will be revealed this summer. The whole project is being kept under wraps. The organisers say this is to maintain the magic of the art. Magic and a bit of penguin power they hope will enliven the city. Antoinette Spicer, Metronews.
Over 90 competitors, young and old, took to the tracks to battle it out for the top spot at the Canterbury MTB Series. Our reporter James Fleury is in on the action at Bottle Lake Forest.
From knobby tyres and triple chain rings to lycra clothing, Cantabrians from 7 to 79 came together to give some of the region's top trails a crack. One young rising star had his game plan set for a short course event.
One of them's to start at the front so I don't have to go through everyone, and then another one is to just, if somebody's coming up behind me, just speed up and go a little bit faster.
Crowd favourite Taylor Reid felt confident with his race strategy.
Because I'm on a single speed, I have no gears. I have to wait either to the sprint or to try and ride away early on. So we'll have a crack early on to get away from everyone else, but I think it'll probably end up in a sprint like it always does out here.
Many of the competitors have competed in the previous 2 races last month, which are needed for qualifying in the series. The person in each age group with the highest amount of points will win.
It's going to be a good race to see who takes out the series. There's probably 3 guys going for it. 2 of them in different age groups, but then we've got another couple that have come in doing their first race this time, so they'll be very competitive. So it'll be a pretty good race with them.
Oliver's plan to lead from the front didn't let him down. The 13-year-old breezed through the finish line well ahead of his rivals. Favourite Taylor Reid was unfortunately pipped near the finish line by competitors Jacob Turner and Nathan Wright, finishing in 3rd place.
We've got race 1, 2,
the event organisers say the most important part of the series, however, was that it was able to go ahead despite COVID-19 restrictions. James Fleury, Metro News.
That's all for Metro News tonight.
For those stories and more, head to our website, metronews.co.nz, or you can find us on Facebook and Instagram.
We'll be back tomorrow night at 7 with a weekly wrap-up. Ko Ursula K. Aho.
Ko Digby Worthmuller Aho.
Ka kite anō.